The first thing I'll need is a sync tool. You can buy gauges that measure vacuum, but I'd actually recommend building something like this. They're easier to use and you'll probably get a more accurate result. There's also videos about how to build these things on YouTube, so I'm not going to go too far into it. But basically, if you apply vacuum to one tube and not the other, the water levels change. But if I apply equal vacuum to both tubes, the water levels stay the same. And that way we'll know if one carburetor is pulling more vacuum than another. You'll see designs of carburetor signals on YouTube that measure all four of the carbs at the same time. However, that's not necessary to use, and you run the possibility of sucking fluid into your cylinder. How syncing works with four carburetors is we're going to be syncing one pair of carbs together, and then we're going to sync the pair on the other end together, and then we're going to balance those two pairs together. On some designs, you'll actually tap into the carburetor itself to measure vacuum, but with the R6, the ports that we're tapping into are actually right below where the carburetor mounts. There's a port on this side of the engine here, and then there's a port here, here, and here. With the tubing on, you can see that the number 1 cylinder will come to a stopper, and then we'll connect to the number 3 cylinder, and the number 2 cylinder will come to a stopper, and then connect to the number 4 cylinder. Before syncing your carbs, you want to make sure all the systems on the bike are running correctly. The bike isn't running too lean, carburetors are clean, under the cylinder misfiring, anything like that. So one cylinder carburetors need to sync and hanging idle. So when I rev up the bike, it won't want to return to idle very quickly. First thing I'll do is take off the seat. Pull the bolt to the back of your fuel tank. Pull the 2 bolts at the top of your fuel tank. Lift the tank up. First we're going to do is shut the fuel off here. We're going to disconnect this green connector. We're going to take the fuel line off coming from the fuel filter, and we're going to disconnect any vent lines connected to the gas tank. Now the tank's ready to come off. So next thing we need to do is hook up an auxiliary fuel tank. So I've just got the tank off of my parts bike, and I've just got some old airline running down to this engine. We'll pull this tube off from the front of the box. Then at the back of the airbox, we'll take off this tube and we'll pull off this box. So before we go any further, I thought I'd show you where exactly you make the adjustments on the carbs. If you look down in between the carbs, you'll see a screw. And you'll need a very thin screwdriver to be able to slot it in between the carburetors and get to that screw right there. And that's where you make your adjustment. There's going to be 3 of them, one in between each pair of carburetors. Now if you look down into the bike, you'll see the actually 4 hoses we need to get to hook up our sync tool to. I've already loosened these off, but if you remember, this first line here is going to be connected to carburetor 1, and the second line here is going to be connected to carburetor 2. So these are the first 2 we're going to sync together. So if you pull these lines apart, you'll see that this is just a plug. We're going to be keeping the plug on the other 2 carburetors. So I've synced the carbs a couple times now, and I've got it pretty ballpark. I've got the intake back on. I don't know if it's 100% necessary, but I'm hoping it'll give a bit more of an accurate result. I'm going to do it one more time and try to record it best I can for you so you can see what's going on. So you want to make sure your bike is up to operating temperature while you're doing this. So let's just hook the hoses up here. This will be for cylinder number 1. And then this will be for cylinder number 2. So the bike will die when you switch the tool in between carburetors, so you're going to have to start and stop your bike. But let's go ahead and start it up. This is cylinder 1 and 2. Right there is pretty good. Now I'm going to switch these plugs over from cylinder 3 and 4 to cylinder 1 and 2. And we'll get the tool connected. So now we're going to sync carburetor 2 and 3 together. So that's going to sync carburetor 1 and 2 to carburetor 3 and 4. So let's go ahead and take the plug out of carburetor 2. And we're going to put it into carburetor 4. We're going to connect our tool to carburetor 2 and carburetor 3. Go ahead and get it back together, play with the idle speed a little bit, see how it runs. Got the idling a lot smoother, it's idling at about the correct RPM. Turn idle quite nicely. You can kind of feel there's less bogging at the lower RPM. Just a bit of an epilogue here. I have the wheels off the bike now because it's getting new tires. The bike did run better after the carb sync, however it's still not perfect, so it seems I still have something else to track down. The idle still hangs, it still feels like it's bogging down lower RPMs. What's bothering me is that it feels like it has no power starting from a stop. The bike is so easy to stall and you can't really do any slow speed maneuvers. Maybe that's how these bikes are, I don't know. If you have a carbureted R6, why don't you leave a comment down below and let me know how your bike runs.